Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we will be talking about spoilers. Big spoilers for the next upcoming expansion. So if you do not want to know anything about that, then please click away now. I've given you fair warning at this point, I think, to, this is going to contain major spoilers, so click away if you don't want to know. But now that time has passed and I've given you fair warning, now let's dive into the video. Because, well, the new champions, let's start with that. Through voice line leaks or through some sort of investigative, that makes sense kind of thing going on, we believe are going to be Echo, Pyke, and Rek'Sai. Now Rek'Sai is, sort of a void champion from what I'm aware, but apparently, maybe comes from Shurima and often is in Shurima, so it kind of makes sense to have Rek'Sai as a Shuriman champion. What that means for, what the next region will be, we don't know, but I think people are somewhat convinced that Rek'Sai makes sense, and I think when you consider Pyke as well, it makes a lot of sense. I think when you read up about the two champions, which we will do, we'll be going through their abilities, on the league thing, and kind of, looking at a description of them, and then trying to see how they might merge together. And I'm going to focus on those two and not Echo today, because I think Echo, will probably synergize with Zilean in some kind of way, whether it's predict or whether it's some other kind of synergy with Zilean's creating of cards or things like that, right? We'll see with Zilean, a whole time shift thing maybe going on. We'll see about that, and maybe I'll make a video about that on its own as well. But today I want to focus on Pyke and Rek'Sai, and we're going to first read through their abilities to just sort of, for those of you who aren't familiar with League, like myself, we're just going to sort of give ourselves a brief overview of those champions, and then we're going to talk about what exactly they might be doing within the actual game of Runeterra and how they might translate. So onto the League website. Here is the sort of description page for Rek'Sai, the Void Burrower. And we can read this little description here. An apex predator, Rek'Sai is a merciless void spawn that tunnels beneath the ground to ambush and devour unsuspecting prey. Her insatiable hunger has laid waste to entire regions of the once great empire of Shurima. Merchants, traders, even armed caravans will go hundreds of miles out of their way to avoid her and her offspring's hunting grounds. All know that once Rek'Sai is seen on the horizon, death from below is all but guaranteed. So we have this kind of, dark, shrouded, like monster thing that comes out of the ground at you. That's Rek'Sai, pretty much in a nutshell. And looking through Rek'Sai's abilities, we have a passive fury of the Rek'Sai? Don't know if I'm saying that right, but Rek'Sai generates fury by attacking and hitting with basic abilities. She consumes this fury while burrowed to restore health. So maybe some kind of restoration effect could be in play. Queen's Wrath, so that's Prey Seeker. Rek'Sai's next 3 basic attacks deal bonus physical damage to nearby enemies. Whilst burrowed, Rek'Sai launches a burst of void-charged earth that deals physical damage and reveals enemies hit. Burrow Unburrow. Rek'Sai burrows into the ground, gaining new abilities and increased movement speed. Her vision range is reduced and she cannot use basic attacks whilst burrowed. Rek'Sai may cast Unburrow to knock up and damage nearby enemies. Furious Bite. Tunnel. Rek'Sai bites her target, dealing double and true damage if she has max fury. While burrowed, Rek'Sai creates a reusable, long-lasting tunnel. Enemies can destroy it by standing on top of either entrance. And Void Rush. Rek'Sai passively marks targets by damaging them. She can activate this ability to become briefly untargetable and lunge at a marked target for heavy damage based on their missing health. So, kind of fitting the description, a lot about tunnels, burrowing, kind of, surprising people coming out of the tunnel and destroying what's on the other side of it. And then if we look at Pyke's description here, and this art, by the way, is absolutely insane. Like, I mean, look at this. This is so cool. And I think Bilgewater might be my favorite region for things like this. It's just, I mean, look at that. Anyway, Pyke's description. A renowned harpooner from the slaughter docks of Bilgewater, Pyke should have met his death in the belly of a gigantic jewelfish, and yet he returned. Now stalking the dank alleys and backways of his former hometown, he uses his new supernatural gifts to bring a swift and gruesome end to those who make their fortune by exploiting others. And a city that prides itself on hunting monsters now finds a monster hunting them. Really cool description. And let's go into Pike's abilities here. We have Gift of the Drowned Ones, which sounds like a card. You know, like some of the times I think like, yeah, that sounds like a card. Like I could, you know, that sounds like a card name that they would print. When Pike is hidden from enemies, he regenerates damage that he has recently taken from champions. Pike also cannot gain extra maximum health from any source and instead gains bonus AD. So again, some regeneration type things, but we'll talk about this a bit later. Bone Skewer, which is already a card. Pike either stabs an enemy in front of him or pulls an enemy towards him. Ghost Water Dive. Pike enters camouflage and gains significant movement speed that decays over time. This one I think is particularly important. Phantom Undertow. Pike dashes and leaves behind a phantom that will return to him, stunning enemy champions along its path. And Death from Below. Again, sounds like a card name, right? Pike blinks to and executes low health enemies, allowing him to cast this spell again and granting additional gold to ally who assists. So I think that both Death from Below and Ghost Water Dive here are kind of quite important. And I say that because they have this similar kind of synergy. And I mentioned regeneration, them both having that, but I don't think that that will be the prime synergy that they go for here, because what I'm predicting is that there will be this kind of murky hidden synergy, right? With the tunnels, with this sort of Ghost Water Dive, and with the Death from Below. This idea of Death from Below, that's a very... I guarantee Death from Below will be a card name, because I'm pretty sure that that is what they want this whole archetype to be. And I wouldn't be shocked if that is Pike's signature spell, called Death from Below. It sounds like a card. It you know, it kind of fits exactly what I expect this theme to be. This kind of hidden theme of, you know, all of a sudden appearing and, you know, coming out of nowhere and killing things. So with that said, let's go back to Runeterra and talk about the biggest clue that we have to what this whole idea and archetype might be. So as I mentioned, there is one card already in the game that kind of very clearly points to and probably helps us predict pretty clearly what exactly this archetype is going to be, and that's Bone Skewer, which, as we just mentioned, is one of Pike's abilities. And if we go into, you know, sort of the little quote here, little parting gift, Pike. So maybe Pike isn't even really a spoiler, because, you know, Pike's name is on a card. And, you know, this is one of Pike's abilities. So it's pretty obvious that Pike was always going to come. And what does that mean? Well, let's look at what Bone Skewer does. Bone Skewer is an ally strikes an enemy, then moves to the top of your deck. And this, I think, is really crucial, because this is a card that very clearly has a synergy with it. This card doesn't really work that well with what we have in the game right now, because it's a synergistic card. Because most of the cards in the game, you don't want to move to the top of your deck again and redraw them. There are some examples, like Dreg Dredgers is a good example for tossing cards. You know, it's very good to just toss more cards. You don't guarantee that you're gonna pick up a card that you can toss that is completely kind of useless later on, but very good in the early game. But aside from that, there aren't really many good synergies for Bone Skewer right now, because it's quite a synergistic effect. And that tells me that we're probably going to get something. And this whole idea of coming out of nowhere, you know, we talked about Pike kind of moving through the shadows, and we talked about, obviously, Rek'Sai burrowing from below. I think that what they're going to translate that to is they're going to come from the deck. They're going to be summoned from the deck. That is what is going to be the case. And and they're going to have some kind of summon abilities that, you know, make it worthwhile to continually sort of summon them over and over again. Whether that's, you know, giving things vulnerable, whether that's dealing little damage to units, which I think would fit kind of both what would work for both, you know, whether it's Rek'Sai coming in and, you know, on summon kill a unit. If you summon me from the deck, kill an enemy unit. That would make sense, I think, for something Rek'Sai. And we're going to have this whole archetype that's about summoning units from your deck that perhaps get some sort of effect that when you summon them from the deck, they become more powerful, which I think is a really cool idea. It's obviously unique. There are no other decks like that in Runeterra at the moment, so it would create this sort of new, completely new sort of feel and game type and abilities, which I think it just makes complete sense. That I am in no doubt that that is exactly what's going to happen. Now, what those units do, when they get summoned from the deck, that I think is up for a much bigger debate, and I'm sure those of you who are more familiar with the League lore and those champions playstyle within League will be able to sort of have a better guess than me. As I say, whether it's killing units or dealing damage to units or giving things vulnerable or whatever, I'm sure that that will be somewhat intertwined into it. But I am very, very certain that this whole archetype will be about summoning things from your deck. Maybe, you know, it has things like if Rek'Sai or Pike is at the top of your deck, you get like a fleeting card that you can summon them from the deck this turn. Instead of waiting to draw them and play them, you know, you get a fleeting card that allows you to just summon them from the top of your deck, and then they do their effect and whatnot. Which I think would be a really, really cool mechanic. And so I'm very excited to see these champions because I think that would be new and it would be exciting. I still do hope, because sometimes when I think about these things and I think, oh yeah, that's a pretty clear synergy that they're going to go with, I do still hope that they have enough flexibility to where they can be played with other things and aren't sort of a Tahm Kench Soraka, you know, sort of situation where they kind of only fit together and that's it. I do hope that they allow them to sort of be more flexible, but I am fairly certain that that is what we are going to get. And if you look thematically at Shurima and Bilgewater, you know, and those two champions in particular, I think there will be some kind of dealing damage effect in there some way, because if you look at the cards that already exist within these regions, I think that that is kind of where the synergy exists between them. There is also some vulnerable synergies, and that's pretty much it. So obviously Bilgewater does have some vulnerable, like Hired Gun, and of course Shurima has lots of granting vulnerable, like Exhaust and the like, all of Renekton's package pretty much. So there are some synergies there, so I wouldn't be shocked if vulnerable is a part of it, but I would wonder if they want that to be sort of the Renekton thing and maybe stick away from that. But I think the other instance of, you know, where you can find synergy is in stuff like the time bombs. You know, they deal one, there's kind of this pinging effect, this small damage effect, and you know, you got that with Misfortune, and you have it with a bunch of Bilgewater cards, you know, Parlay and Make It Rain and Warning Shot. There's a bunch of different cards that do that. But within Shurima, as I mentioned, the time bombs, there's also things like Ruinous Path, which if I can find is here, you know, which feels like, you know, if you maybe took, well, to be honest, if you replace the word slain with something else, you know, plunder, if you replace slain with plunder, don't you think that this maybe not drain, but okay, you remove drain and you remove slain for plunder. This feels kind of Bilgewater-y, right? It's quite a Bilgewater effect to be dealing damage to the enemy nexus, you know, if you do fill certain condition and drawing a card as well. So I think that there are some sort of ties in here to the region. So I would expect that what we're going to get is a deck summoning deck where, you know, your aim is to, you know, summon whatever on the top of your deck, the creature there, that then gives some sort of summon ability that is either to do with vulnerable or killing a unit or dealing damage to either the Nexus or units as well. And I think that that is what we are going to get, and so I'm very excited for you to all tell me how wrong I am, and that, you know, I'm completely a waste of time, and that, you know, Chris, you've got this wrong again already. How have you done that? But if not, then, you know, I do look forward to that archetype a lot, because I think that that would be a super fun archetype. And I did want to make this video because then we get to see, you know, how right was I, how wrong was I, and the like. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with another Legends of Runeterra video tomorrow. Let me know if you do want to see sort of like a predict for Echo. Predict, get it? You know, of what I think Echo will do. Which I'm fairly certain will synergize with Zillion in some way. But with that said, thank you so much for watching and have a really nice day.